COVID-19 cases on a rapid decline in Nigeria as only 95 cases were recorded on Monday. Nigeria's foreign trade plunges by nearly a third in second quarter. In international news, U.S. coronavirus deaths near 200,000. And in sports, NFF President Amaju Pinnick says he's not desperate for CAF presidency.
This is ANN News.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit. We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Nigeria's COVID-19 cases have risen to nearly 57,500 with 195 new infections reported on Monday. The Nigerian Center for Disease Control reports new death toll of 1,100. Monday's new infections were one more than the previous day's figure. The health agency also reported 105 recovered patients were discharged as 2 new fatalities were recorded. 10 states and the Federal Capital Territory reported new cases on Monday as Enugu State beat others to take the lead with 51 cases. Gombe followed with 40. Lagos came third with just 1 fewer. Plateau, FCT and Rivers chalked up cases in double digits, while Kaduna, Ondo, Bauchi, Edo and Ogun State confirmed single digits. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has advised that the country should not begin celebrations because of declining number of COVID-19 cases in the country. The group says this is the time the country should test more people, isolate and treat more. During the national briefing on Monday, PTF Chairman Boss Mustafa called on Nigerians to, quote, get out and get tested. He also advised the people persuade friends and relatives arriving in the country from high-risk destinations to self-isolate and get tested on the 7th day of their arrival in the country. He said even though Nigeria's cases are declining, global figures have surpassed 31 million cases, a jump of more than 1 million cases in 4 days. He also pointed to high-burden countries like the USA, where more than 30,000 cases are being reported daily and where the number of infections has surpassed 7 million. The country is about to cross the 200,000 mark for fatalities as a result of the pandemic. He also pointed to India, where very high infection numbers are being reported on a daily basis. Mustafa said the lesson for Nigeria in all of these examples is that no matter how much appreciable progress is recorded, the country should be more vigilant than ever before, especially as the airspace has been reopened to international travels and restrictions have been relaxed. The PTF chairman said the country cannot afford to import more of this virus. He lauded the action of the joint health sector unions and Assembly of Healthcare Professionals, JOHETSU, for suspending their planned strike. He said this would help sustain government efforts to strengthen the country's health system. Kenyan President Nana Akufo-Addo says Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram terrorists are taking advantage of poverty in northeast Nigeria to recruit new members. Akufo-Addo made the comment while on a working visit to the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, Commission in Abuja on Monday. The Ghanaian president said insurgents were also infiltrating the Lake Chad Basin, Mali, and the Greater Sahel. Akufo-Addo has called for a strong regional approach to contain the growing threats of terrorist and extremist activity. He is calling on the regional bloc to implement the $1 billion plan of action put in place in Abuja in December to finance activities aimed at eradicating terrorism in ECOWAS. The National Bureau of Statistics has reported Nigeria's external merchandise trade declined by nearly 1/3 in the second quarter of the year. The performance is also said to have dropped to nearly 1/3 when compared to second quarter last year, when the country recorded nearly 9 trillion naira in trade. Of course, the coronavirus pandemic played a heavy role in the losses. Correspondent Kelechi Mekalam has the details.
For nearly 6 months now, production at this honey factory in Nigeria's capital Abuja has stalled. Bee farmer Ademola Adeshina had spent over a decade producing and exporting honey and other byproducts to various parts of the world. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, he produced an average 150 tons of honey every year, mainly for exports. But now more than 80% of his earnings have been cut off.
We rear bees in the farm, and the lockdown has kept us indoors. We could not go to the farm. We have virtually not been able to do any export business throughout this year because of the lockdown.
Funds were lost. So if you begin to quantify it, in percentage wise, I should say, so many people lost over 80-90% of what they would have gained this month. And then there were no serious stimulus packages from government to assist when these things happened.
Nigeria has continued to experience a major shortfall in trade. The country's Bureau of Statistics puts the latest plunge at 27%. Foreign trade dropped to $16.09 billion from $22.3 billion recorded in the second quarter of 2019. Exports too plummeted by 51.7% year-on-year to $6.1 billion, while imports declined by 14.6% to hit $11.1 billion year-on-year.
We know that industry in Nigeria is at the end of being totally out of existence, and yet the government is not looking at how to revamp in the industrial sector. We have the manufacturing sector that is gradually going into moribund. There is need to establish or to ensure that we have functional infrastructure to accommodate our industrial processes and growth. If we really want to compete globally and earn enough foreign exchange, promote exports, then we need to put in place infrastructure.
Trade deficit is feared to impact on the country's revenue being largely an oil-dependent nation. The report also reveals that Nigeria's imports still outweighs its exports. This
Coming up, African stories. DRC, Nigeria, Burundi, among countries falling world's largest food crisis. And later, international news. US coronavirus deaths near 200,000.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says action is needed now to address the largest food crisis in the world, warning there is a risk of famine and widespread food insecurity in 4 countries affected by conflict. In Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Nigeria, Burundi, and South Sudan are on the list of endangered countries.
The Democratic Republic of Congo's position in the current report released by the Food and Agriculture Organization does not come as a surprise. The organization says about 21.8 million people in the nation are facing acute food shortages. Although FAO primarily attributes the situation to the coronavirus pandemic, there are other pre-existing factors playing into the food crisis in the Great Lakes nation. Before coronavirus hit the country, Congo was already battling Ebola and measles outbreaks. Food production was further hampered by insecurity in the east, which has also posed a challenge for aid teams working on the ground. Burkina Faso also features on the list, with a nearly 300% rise in the number of people experiencing food shortage. The country is part of the larger Sahel region that is battling an Al-Qaeda and ISIL insurgency. Nigeria also features on the list. With over 200 million citizens, the sub-Saharan African economic giant supplements its food needs through imports. With the closure of borders, flights and shipping services, a section of the population is struggling. There is also a Boko Haram insurgency in the north, together with periodic tribal clashes. These have made it hard for local communities to work on their farms and produce food.
The battle to defeat COVID-19 has been on in Africa for months now. Earlier on, Kenya knew it would need to diverse ingenious methods to treat infected patients in the country as isolation centers became overcrowded. So it considered and implemented home treatment for certain groups of patients, and the idea has been quite successful. Robert Magila has the story.
At her B&B business in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, owner Heritage says back on her feet after testing positive for COVID-19 2 months ago. After experiencing symptoms, she isolated herself for a week before taking a COVID-19 test, which came back positive. After consultations with her doctor,
we said, let's go into home-based care, because my symptoms, although quite severe, did not involve that loss of oxygen.
Heritage says her family played a key role in her journey to recovery. Guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health allow family members to act as caregivers alongside community health workers. Heritage symptoms persisted for 3 weeks.
Second test came back positive. And so when I spoke with my doctors, they said it's entirely the case that you're still symptomatic, you're still coughing, you're not completely unwell. So you're one of those unfortunate cases where it's just lingered.
She admits it wasn't easy on her mental health.
I remember often not being sure whether I was awake or asleep or even alive or dead, so that anxiety kicks in.
The home-based care system was introduced in June to relieve pressure from the health system after a rise in asymptomatic cases. At the time, at least 78% of those who tested positive for COVID-19 were asymptomatic cases.
One of the things we realize is that when you're within your home environment, it is much easier for you to recover much faster. You receive much more personalized care. You receive much more nutritious supplementation in terms of feeding. And as well, you receive the love and care that you receive from a family.
Now fully recovered, Heritage says, contrary to what many think, home-based care is expensive, but she would much rather recover at home than in a hospital.
My recovery at home was a lot easier than it would have been if I was in hospital. As I mentioned, I kept testing positive. Imagine what that would have meant for my mental health if I was in hospital.
Tunisia began easing international travel restrictions and opening frontiers in June after it felt an improvement in numbers of coronavirus cases. In August, wearing of masks in public and commercial places became mandatory as number of new cases increased in the country. Now, Tunisia is in its third phase of the pandemic, and correspondent Admin Chawarchit spells out what that means.
The Ministry of Health has warned Tunisians that the country has entered the third phase of its COVID-19 outbreak. Fawzi Mehdi pointed out that the death rate from the virus has not exceeded 1%, while the average age of those who died is 75 years.
I call on Tunisian citizens to coexist with the virus without fear, while respecting the health instructions and hygiene standards. The next stage requires vigilance, caution, and the application of the health protocol in public places.
The minister has announced the opening of Al Manza Field Hospital. This sports facility has 80 beds equipped with ventilators and 4 ICU beds.
The hospital is ready to accommodate patients from the very first signs of infection. The number of ICU beds during this period meets the needs without exceeding the accommodation capacity. We still need to overcome coordination problems towards proper bed distribution of patients.
The national coordinator for the anti-COVID-19 program and spokesperson for the health ministry stressed that the number of infected medical and paramedical staff is likely to increase in the country.
450 medics and paramedics have tested positive for COVID-19. The increase is in light of community transmissions of the virus due to the spread of active outbreaks in many areas. Epidemiological investigations showed that most infections caused by the disease took place outside hospitals.
The National Observatory of New and Emerging Diseases revealed that several medics and paramedics contracted the virus outside hospitals. The infected individuals later spread the coronavirus inside a number of health facilities. The Ministry of Health is carrying out massive screening to isolate infected medics, paramedics and patients. The active outbreaks discovered at some health facilities are currently under control, while ongoing investigations are carried out to prevent the spread of the virus.
When we return, international news. U.S. coronavirus deaths near 200,000. NFF President Amaju Pinnick says he's not desperate for CAF presidency.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. More than 31 million people around the world have been diagnosed with COVID-19 and nearly 1 million globally have died from it. Since the first cases were detected in China in December, the virus has rapidly spread to every continent except Antarctica. The United States is the worst affected country, with nearly 7 million diagnosed cases and close to 200,000 fatalities. California has the highest number in the United States, with nearly 800,000 persons diagnosed. Johns Hopkins University reports California is followed by Texas with more than 734,000 cases and Florida with 685,000. Authorities in Greece have confirmed 243 persons among thousands of asylum seekers on the island of Lesbos have tested positive for coronavirus infections. Health officials say the average age of this confirmed positive was 24 and most were asymptomatic. All 160 police and administrative staff who had come in contact with the migrants tested negative for the virus. Government spokesperson Stelios Pestis says the positive cases would be added to Greece's official coronavirus figures. More than 12,000 asylum seekers were left homeless nearly 2 weeks ago after fires in 2 nights destroyed the notoriously overcrowded Moria camp. Greek authorities say the fires were deliberately set by a small group of Afghans angered by lockdown and isolation orders. The country is experiencing a resurgence of the virus with more than 15,000 confirmed positive cases and 338 deaths in this country of nearly 11 million people. A monument dedicated to those who have died from coronavirus has been unveiled in Brazil. The architect of the Infinity Memorial says this is a platform to provide families with a symbol of their loss. Brazil has the second highest death rate in the world after the United States. Correspondent Lucrecio Francio reports from Rio de Janeiro.
The Infinity Monument for COVID-19 victims, a curved, oxidized steel sculpture representing spirituality, nature, and the concept of perpetuity, a place where Brazilian families can gather and mourn and remember their loved ones. It was unveiled in a Rio de Janeiro cemetery at a moment when COVID-19 still shows no sign of slowing, and graveside funeral services are hurried with few family members permitted to attend.
The Infinity Monument was conceived to help those who were not able to mourn properly, whose mourning was rushed because of health concerns, who only had a short time to bid their loved ones farewell.
The inauguration of the monument included a secular ceremony that paused for a minute of silence and included photographs of some of those who lost their lives. Gisele Diniz is grateful for the monument, inscribed with the names of some victims, including her father.
For me, he is alive forever. His name is here. And so when I would like to talk to him, to change some ideas with him, I came here and look at his name.
The ceremony coincided with the observance of World United for Life Day, organized by an International Funeral Directors Association.
It's not just a memorial for those who died, it's also for those who survived. It's a memorial for reflecting on life.
With over 136,000 deaths, Brazil remains second only to the United States in its number of COVID-19 fatalities. Brazilians hope that someday this monument will be a reminder of a pandemic in the distant past. But with the death toll continuing to mount, nobody really knows when the suffering will end.
Chinese authorities have announced 3 new pilot-free trade zones in the capital city of Beijing, the southern province of Hunan, and the eastern province of Anhui. Authorities say this is to attract foreign investment, stimulate trade, and boost regional development.
China's Free Trade Zone Club is set to welcome 3 new members.
The newly added pilot free trade zones in Beijing, Hunan, Anhui, and the extension to Zhejiang pilot free trade zone would enable exploration of greater reform and innovation in a wider scope.
The move will bring the total number of China's free trade zones to 21. Specifically, it is hoped to further open up the services industry in Beijing, to develop an advanced manufacturing industry in Hunan province, to focus on technological innovation in Anhui province, and to further develop AI tech and digital economy in Zhejiang province.
The 4 provinces and cities have favorable conditions for an export-oriented economy. Last year, they together accounted for over 21% of foreign investment. In particular, the service sector accounts for 83% of Beijing's GDP.
Wang said the nationwide negative list has been cut by 80% since the first pilot free trade zone was established in Shanghai. He added these 21 zones will play a leading role in further opening up the whole country.
Up next, sport. Nigeria Football Federation President Amaju Pinnick says he's not desperate for CAF presidency. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, with the CAF elections fixed for March next year, Nigeria Football Federation President Amaju Pinnick says he's not hasty or desperate about becoming the next president. Pinnick was removed last year from his role as the body's first vice president. He was replaced with South Africa's Danny Jordan. World's tennis number 1 Novak Djokovic has won a record 36th Masters title by beating Diego Schwartzman in Italian Open. The Serbian, playing in his first tournament since being disqualified from this month's US Open, won 7-5, 6-3 in the final to get a slot in next week's French Open. 33-year-old Djokovic drew level with Rafael Nadal last month on the all-time list of Masters winners with his Western and Southern Open title. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.